The last 70 water Susan. Yeah, there's a lot of people who are hungry and that's where we have the nurse helped him die. I mean, you say we sort of believe I'm not getting up my feet anymore. No, it's everybody in our house.
Good evening. Man, that mic is really on tonight. Better stand back a little bit. Some of you I know, some of you I don't know, so I'll say to all of you at the same time, welcome to St. Anne's and welcome to the first in a series of community faith conversations. Should also say a special welcome to those members of G.I.F.T, Growing in Faith Together, which is a group, for those of you who don't know what G.I.F.T is, it's a group of 20 faith communities in the greater Green Bay area, and they have been providing interfaith worship opportunities for Thanksgiving, Martin Luther King Jr. Day for about 15 years now. And they are our co-sponsors in community faith conversations. So Community Faith Conversations is a project that Deacon Mary Lynn and I sort of cooked up as a way to talk about the way that our different faiths affect the way that we interact with our communities. And part of the purpose of tonight's faith conversation is to promote understanding between different faith groups. And so into the fray tonight, we welcome Rabbi Emeritus Shaina Bacharach. On the table as you're coming into the space, there was a card there for questions, for you to write any questions that you have down. We'll collect those cards during a brief intermission we'll have after the first part of the presentation. And then we'll play Stump the Rabbi and see what kind of answers we get. So an introduction of Rabbi Shaina Bacharach. She is the Rabbi Emeritus of Congregation Knesset Israel in Green Bay. Rabbi Shaina grew up in Clarksdale, Mississippi, not far from where I grew up, the home of the Delta Blues. Rabbi Shaina's family moved to Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, in time for her to attend the University of Oklahoma. She graduated from the university's nursing college and became a registered nurse. Life brought her gradually to the Jewish Theological Seminary in New York City, the Rabbinate, and eventually the Frozen Tundra, which has been her home for nearly 2 decades. So you've got a couple of years on me up here. She and her husband, Robert Dick, have 4 children between them: Elise, Jenny, Sean, and Simon, and 2 daughters-in-law, 2 grandchildren, a dog and a cat, and a huge family in Oklahoma. So please welcome Rabbi Shaina to the lectern.
Thank you. And I was afraid I had left off the dog and the cat, so I'm glad I remembered. First, although when I put this up, my dear friend Mary Lynn said, Judaism is not really the most disorganized, organized religion. And even though I think it probably is, I'm sure there are others that are equally disorganized. But that's the fun. Okay. Mary Lynn, as she set this up, sent us some questions. And there are some of them that I said, it's okay if I spend 2 or 3 hours on this topic. And she said yes, thinking I was kidding. The first thing we have up is the golden rule. Is the whole thing showing?
It's just out of this one.
Hillel, a great teacher who lived probably 100, 150 years before Jesus, talked about our attitude towards other people. There are many stories about him. And by the way, he was a member of the school of Pharisees, which were the progenitors of modern Jewish law, ancient Jewish law. And we see them in a very different context than they're often portrayed. These are our beloved lawgivers and teachers. Hillel and his colleague Shammai were both asked by a Roman pagan, tell me about Judaism. Teach me Torah while you're standing on one foot, and I will convert. First, they went to Shammai, who was stricter, and said, he chased them away like, there's no way we can do this. You have to go study, then come back. He went to Hillel, who said, do not do to others what is hateful to you. All the rest is commentary. Now go and study. But that simple teaching did convey the essence of what we hold dearest. And so Rabbi Hillel did convert the men. Later, our teacher, Rabbi Akiva, and I'm going to guess that Hillel's teaching what is hateful to you, do not do, is familiar. You've heard it in a more positive, light, but it's the same teaching. And Jesus knew Jewish teachings. That shouldn't be a shock. Later, Rabbi Akiva said, the most important precept in the Torah, which is in the first five books of Moses, is love your neighbor as yourself. That is in the book of Leviticus. Now, another rabbi, great teacher, Ben Azai, said, actually, there's one even greater. And that is from Genesis, when it says, this is the book of the generations of Adam. This teaches us, if we're all descended from the same person, we're all the same family, we're all related, humanity is one, and therefore that is the greatness of Torah. These are both great aspects, but you see that if I could boil Judaism down into one statement, it would be how we treat other people, because we are created in the image of God. This goes way beyond the creation story, but this is the purpose of the creation story. And so our relationship to the divine is there for us. We just have to see it. We can't shame other people. These are bedrock principles, which probably among the easiest commandments to break are the commandments to not gossip, to not do this or that. But they're also the most important when it comes right down to it. We can go to the next one. One of the questions was about hierarchy. That's our hierarchy. We have none. We do have a rabbinic organization that the conservative rabbis we all belong to. It doesn't tell us, they don't tell us what to do. We ask each other, and we know to go to each other if there's a question we can't answer. But it's not a hierarchical relationship, unless there's an ethical issue, which our group takes very seriously. Now, I know that most churches do have hierarchies, and there are times I've really envied that, especially in our weekly breakfast, and we talk about the latest COVID restrictions, and here's what the church has said you should do, and how many, when you should open up, how you should open, etc. And it's like I sit there and We don't have anyone else. We discuss it. Some synagogues do this, some do that. We talk about it. But those are the times I wish we had somebody telling us what to do in these cases. But most of the time, I wouldn't want it. But that's us. That's what makes us so disorganized. When it comes to our history, this is one of those how much time do we have questions. We've been around a very long time. These, if you don't recognize these people, Abraham and his son Isaac, we're sure that's how they looked. Abraham is considered by all of us, he and his wife Sarah, to be the first Jews. Then he had his son Isaac and his wife, his son Jacob. Later they multiplied. They were the original, this was our origin until Egypt. And I figured that Moses, who plays such an outsized role, deserved at least 3 pictures. And of course, one, he was a baby set in the basket in the Nile. And here he is. These happened close together, splitting. It's actually the Sea of Reeds, often called the Red Sea. It's not the Red Sea, but he's splitting the water. And I have a walking stick just like that. And try as I might, I cannot get that to happen at the Fox. Moses at Mount Sinai, bringing the 10 Commandments. And actually it is said that he spent a long time on the mountain. And according to tradition, God taught him the entire Torah there, not just the 10. And in fact, we don't usually, it's simple to refer to them as the 10 Commandments, but they're not really. We have a few more. Anyone want to take a guess? 613. And my husband raised his hand, but note I didn't call on him. Because if he got the answer wrong, it would be a real problem. But we do. But a lot of this comes from what we see in the Torah, the first 5 books of Moses. Well, let's finish our history and go to the next slide. We had in Israel, I have a picture of King David, who is the second king, but the first king of the United I think it's a United Kingdom. There was a king of Scotland named King David. But we have a picture of the temple, what we think it looked like, and David, what we think he looked like. But that's the biblical part of our history. And then after that, we scattered. And this is 2,000 years worth of history here. And suffice it to say, we ended up in a lot of countries. We were in Africa, and actually still are. And China, Japan, India, as well as Europe, etc. Took us a long time in a modern era to find the Jews of India, the Jews of Africa, etc. They had been cut off from us for centuries and centuries. A pervasive notion among our own people is that we're all of European ancestry, especially Eastern Europe. So we started in Israel, went to Eastern Europe, and then went to New York. And for my friends and brethren in New York, that makes all the sense in the world. But every New Yorker pretty well looks at New York that way. There's New York and then everyone else. Another prevalent idea is persecution, that our history has been miserable. It's been one of thousands of years of oppression. We have had a lot of persecution. We have been through a lot of the Holocaust is the most recent and obvious example, but the Crusades, lots of Jews were killed, the Spanish Inquisition, all over, not just Europe, all over many places. If that was our entire history, I don't think we would still be here. That's also referred to as the lachrymose version of Jewish history, which has all been so miserable, and all we did was suffer. So therefore, because of that suffering, we must cling to Judaism and Torah. Well, that really doesn't work too well, but we did have so many wonderful times. It's successful times, happy times, good family relationships. That it's we can't take any one slice of his Jewish history any more than the country could, the world could. It's been that different in so many places and over so many times. Now let's talk a little about prayer. And I've got several pictures here. One is our Torah, which is the first 5 books, is in a scroll. At services, we read from it. Usually twice on weekday if we had services, and on Saturday morning. This is one of my favorite things to do. I adore this. Now, Torah is written. Classical Hebrew has no vowels. We chanted it a certain way, but there are no cantillation marks. So we learn it from a book that does have vowels and does have cantillation marks, which in Jewish history is a recent innovation. It's been maybe 1,100 years. A family of rabbis by the name of Ben Asher in Tiberias in Israel decided, at some point we're going to forget how to pronounce things. So he devised this wonderful system of dots and dashes and other little squiggly marks. The dots and dashes were vowels. The squiggly marks were for cantillation. And beginning Hebrew readers learned with that. Hebrew newspapers do not have vowels. Classical study materials, many of them don't have vowels. Some have been added and we grab those up. But the Torah, the holiest part of what we do and learn, not only has no vowels, it's in a scroll, it's written on vellum, which is from an animal.
I was going to also add there are no chapters and verses.
Oh.
Right, exactly.
That's right. Yes, we do thank our Christian friends for that. It's very helpful. In the scroll, though, those don't exist. And so you just have to know where your place is. Sometimes it's easier to find than others.
When the rabbi says turn from Deuteronomy to Genesis,
if you've ever been in our synagogue to visit, you're all welcome. We have 5 or 6 scrolls. 6, thank you. And they're all set in different places because on different holidays, we'll read from different scrolls. And if, say, on a given holiday, you have something in Genesis and something in Deuteronomy or Numbers, it's like, give me a half-hour, please, while I re-roll the scroll. So it saves a lot of time. Unless there's just a few chapters in between, we don't get out at second, but usually they're radically different places. But some of our services, until recently, first everything was on Zoom, then we were doing hybrid services. When we were doing the hybrid service, a close friend decided to take a picture of me reading Torah, which was welcome, except we traditionally don't take pictures, use electronics, etc. on Sabbath. And so she says, I have to tell you and show you. But then it was like, I love the picture, Margaret. I'm going to use this when I talk. So this is a forbidden, wonderful picture. I love reading from this scroll. And here you've also got, a picture of a scroll with its mantle unwrapped and one that's open. And the things I wish I could show you close up, but it's hard to bring them. But this is the repository of so much holiness. And whether or not we take it literally, some do, some don't, that part isn't important. It's holy in every respect. Don't need to do the world again. These are some of our writings. Here's the Tanakh. I refer to our Bible as the Hebrew Bible. I know that many refer to it as the Old Testament, but that would imply that there's another testament for us, and there's not for us. So we simply refer to it as the Hebrew Scripture, or as Tanakh, which is a Hebrew name, or Mikra, which is another Hebrew name. And it's a really good book. We have a number of books to explain the Torah, and they get more complicated as they go on. We've got a set called the Mishnah, which explains what the rabbis meant in Jewish law, in the Torah, and a lot of things that are said in Torah, like, no, that's not what it means. But then another generation or so of rabbis come along, and I don't know what the Mishnah meant, so let's talk about it. So from the Bible, our Bible, to the 6 volumes of the Mishnah, we have like 60 volumes of Talmud. And it's great fun to study, very hard to study, but it's, and you would think that at that point that we had enough learning to satisfy, but we have had so many books on top of that. Books explaining this, books explaining that. And they continue to be written because every generation sees things differently, which is how it should be. But and modern world welcome. This is my iPad, or at least an iPad. Every Hebrew book or text I can imagine is on my device. The same with my iPhone. The iPad's easier to read. I remember when it first, because when I used to, Bob and I were married when I was in school. I was in New York, he was in Oklahoma City. We went back and forth. And whenever I came back home, I had to bring lots of books, which, today I would be paying lots of overage for weight, and did tear up suitcases. But then came a DVD that had almost everything on it. And even better, we started to get it on apps. And it's I've seen a lot of people using iPhones for prayers, etc., because it's you don't have to drag so many heavy books around. Modern life is a blessing. This is the e-Torah. let's go to the next one. Okay, this is prayer. Let me see what I have up here. The picture of flowers is to indicate that prayer is spontaneous. We have a liturgy, we have prayer books, but we also talk to God whenever we want. And this is one of my flowers, and that was this is the best thing I could put up there. So if that's not proof of God, what is? But there's an open prayer book. Our services range from some people do them all in Hebrew, some mostly English. Ours are a blend, and we sing most of our services. It's always been that way. Some of the tunes change, some of the chants change, but much of the Hebrew is chanted and sung. Now we'll go to Shabbat holidays. Now, the candles on the far side, we begin before sundown, which is a challenge when the time changes, by lighting the candles to bring the Sabbath in with light. If we if we end up later than sundown, we just leave it alone because we're not supposed to light fires on Shabbat. If you live in Israel, there's a siren that blows when it's time to light, at least in Jerusalem and some other cities. We don't have that here. We just have to know and get there in time. This is a Kiddush cup, and we use wine or grape juice and recite prayers over it. And of course, grapes and wine have always been a great product of Israel. And that's where we actually pronounce the Sabbath holy. And then after that, we traditionally, and this is usually before services, we have a festive meal. The traditional bread we use is called challah. Now, this will look very familiar to Bob because this is one that he makes this every week. So, and takes pictures and posts them. So that's the challah we eat. And our dog also, our dog Duke is always here when we do the blessings. And yes, he expects some of the bread too. In the ancient sacrifices, I should say offerings, challah was part of the ritual, but the bread always had a piece taken off and thrown to the sacrificial fire, the fire on the altar. So today we don't have the fire, but we do take a piece off of it, as do the priest, because our table represents the ancient ritual with an already dead animal, not, I should say meat. We're not killing animals on Shabbat or anytime. But this is always how we begin our meal. We begin with prayers, we end with songs and a blessing over after we eat. And that's the only place the Torah tells us to bless food. There's a line in Deuteronomy: when you eat and are satisfied, and bless. And therefore, the first commandment is after you eat, that's when you say blessings. And then the rabbis realized that if we say them after, surely the logic extends to before the meal, before we eat. So we do bless in both directions. And often on Shabbat, it's time to sing, do songs, be festive. We do have services at night and in the morning, Friday night and Saturday morning. Jewish day begins at night. And anyone want to guess why? Except for Bob. In the order of creation, it begins. There was evening, there was morning, day one. Second day, there was evening and there was morning, the second day, etc. And so therefore, our days begin with night, which used to always be great teaching Hebrew school children about Hebrew days of the week, because by the time we're on standard time, they come to school and it's really dark. Now, what's today? No, that was yesterday. We're in a new day. I need to throw in the intricacies of the Jewish calendar. The Muslims use a totally lunar calendar. Their holidays move a lot from our calendar. A lunar month is 29 and a half days. So over 2 or 3 years, you lose a month. Our holiday, the early Muslims did that. They weren't so much a pastoral people or agricultural. We were, and our holidays revolve around harvest, etc., planting time, and almost every single holiday has something agricultural associated with it. So say Sukkot in the fall, which will be in a couple of weeks. We're in the middle of a big holiday season. It's big harvest, the last harvest of the year. And it would be so weird if we were celebrating that in June. So we've always balanced the lunar calendar with solar time. And the rabbis would go into a field and if it's not going to be ready for planting, we need to throw in an extra month. So every 2 or 3 years, early fall, early spring, we have leap year, an extra month. So this year, the holidays began really early on the regular calendar, which we'll have Thanksgiving mixed up with Hanukkah. We're really close, which is not usual. But then next year, fall, everything will be pushed back quite a bit. And I mean, the Jewish calendar never changes, but the one everyone lives by does. The most important holiday is the Shabbat, the Sabbath. It is the seventh day of the week. We learn about it from the Ten Commandments, and there's also a slightly revised version in Deuteronomy, but it's clear that this is a day of holiness. There are certain things we can do, certain things we cannot do. Once upon a time, I looked at everything that we don't do, and I thought of them as prohibitions and just no-nos, can't do. Then I realized it freed me to do other things and to really enjoy the day. And it can be a soul-enriching time, a sacred time, family time, big meals, etc. It's a wonderful, wonderful experience. And because there are things we don't do, sometimes it's not good to do everything you think you want to do. Our holidays, especially Shabbat, prove that. We also, yes, on Shabbat, Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, which we just celebrated, and I had to look hard to find a picture of a woman. This is a shofar. Traditionally shofars are ram's horns, but they can be anything, and ours are generally kudu horns. And it looks like a kudu horn. And this woman is blowing it. And that's also to prove that, yes, women do the things that men do. On Rosh Hashanah, that's the Jewish New Year. But it's not New Year in the sense of let's party. It's New Year in the sense of reevaluate your life. and talking to God and apologizing to people and wanting to start off on a much, much better foot. But we also eat apples and honey, hoping for a good, sweet New Year. To the left of that little booth is a sukkah, which for the Harvest Festival we build. Traditionally, Jews sleep in them as well as eat in them. We eat in them, but there's a difference between the climate in Israel, perfect for Sukkot, and being in Green Bay, which loves inviting people over, join us in the sukkah, and it's like, oh, but it's really cold, let's go in. So if we get to eat 1 or 2 meals out there, we're really happy. But and this circle down here represents Passover, and this Seder plate, which holds various symbols, and actually the circle up there is showing the months, but it's hard to see. And to go into depth on any of these would be a very long time. We are now in the middle of a season known as the Days of Teshuvah, or also Yamim Noraim, the Days of Awe, which again begin with the Jewish New Year. And actually, the month before the Jewish New Year is a special time where we're already doing a lot of self-reflecting, study, spiritual preparation for the coming days. Then comes the Jewish New Year. 10 days later, Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, which will begin tomorrow night. The services for both of these days are awesome. They're longer than usual, except during COVID pandemics. But they're generally so awesome that it's, and then we follow it up with Sukkot, which is the harvest holiday. It's a holy time. And it's a wonderful time to thank God for everything we have. And it is a beautiful thought. And it's kind of relaxing. And the holidays I've noted here are all biblical. I left off some other holidays that are probably more well known, especially Hanukkah and Purim. Hanukkah is a wonderful holiday. It's a great time. It came into being after the Bible was canonized, and now the holiday Purim, which is based on the book of Esther, is biblically rooted also, but those don't have the holiness that these other days do. I mean, they're still great. They're great fun, wonderful time, always to relate to God, but if I give you a list of our holiest days, they're further down. Also, just briefly, we keep kosher. The dietary laws are in chapter 11. Well, in Leviticus, actually, they list the animals we can and can't eat. Animals have to be slaughtered a certain way. All kinds of regulations. I'm running short on time, so I'm just going to gloss over that. But I do want to get to the question that she gave me. What's misunderstood about Judaism? Where do I start? First of all, people have come to view the Hebrew Bible as God as angry and vengeful. But that's not how we look at it. I mean, we see a loving God throughout there. Yes, God gets angry. Who wouldn't? But that is not the overall picture of God. God is a very loving God, the one who taught us to love each other and even to love our enemies, not to hate them. There's so many of the laws of the Torah are how we treat each other and live a righteous life, how we are supposed to help each other. how we should never have a clenched fist. Somebody is needy, open your hand. It's so emphatic in the Hebrew. Open your hand. You're a sinner if you don't. And these are stereotypes that lead to bigotry. By the way, we're not really trying to control the world. People see Michelangelo's statue and think we have horns. I had a friend who's had someone actually walk up to her and like started doing this with her head. What are you doing? I'm looking for the horns. We don't have them. And also, there are those that think that Jews deserve to suffer because we killed Jesus. We did not. It's the Romans killed Jesus. It's pretty clear. We were vassals of Rome. We had no power. Rome had power. In fact, Rome was killing lots of Jews at the same time. Somehow that became attached to us and led to a lot of Jewish deaths, and which is kind of like from something that's not true. But, you know, it's so easy. It's like we see all this about disinformation on the internet. Our lives, we hear all these things, and we learn and realize, oh, that's not it. And that's basic. Now I'll turn to your questions. Can you buy challah bread in Green Bay? I think there are a couple of places. Also, Breadsmith, wasn't it? Breadsmith is going out of business. I just saw in the paper. So there's another place, I think, I don't know.
In the pier, Open Heart or something like that also sells it.
Yeah, it's just down the street. I can't remember the name. And we don't buy it because I've got a husband that is a great cook and baker. Yeah, the 613 commandments are down there, are down here also. These are, the Torah tells us, you may not have sex with this person, with a relative, etc. You may not. There are so many things we can do, we cannot do. Some of the commandments are geared strictly towards the priest in the temple that's not here. And I mean, those are out of reach for us, so we don't do those. I mean, the Torah has a commandment to let your land lie fallow every 7 years, and it's called the Shemitah year. We also remit debts. It's like we forgive debts, and this is not, we're talking about a time before commercial loans, that these were loans to help people. They had to make special arrangements because then people would get close to like the seventh year. I'm not going to help you. They had to work that part out.
This is the Shemitah year in Israel.
What?
This is the Shemitah year.
Oh, yeah. And if we were thinking. Also, if you look at American bankruptcy laws, and like, you know, if you declare bankruptcy, you're 7 years and then you're okay. All these, so many things from the Torah have made it into America's foundation. Justice, justice shall you pursue on the Liberty Bell. That is a quote from the book of Deuteronomy. Does our congregation count the Omer? Yes. And the Omer is biblically ordained from Pesach to the holiday of Shavuot, which is kind of like your Pentecost. And we're supposed to count every day and every week. There's a blessing we say before it. And yes, we do that at services. We do that at the house. And luckily, I have an app that reminds me, like, sometimes it's like, Bob, wake up, gotta count, or just say amen. But yet, no, yes, we do. And I think it's what I love about this. It's our way of saying every day has its own quality. Every day is special. And we're also counting up to the holiday linked to God's revelation at Mount Sinai, and counting up to holiness, said that too is very special. Prayer being spontaneous and personal, it's always been a mixture. I mean, we do have our liturgy, a set liturgy, and actually there's a place where it says your own personal prayer. Sometimes substitutes, well, this was the private prayer of this rabbi, which misses the point. But yes, it's also spontaneous. It should not be defined by the prayer book. We do pray at set times, 3 times a day, before meals, after meals, et cetera, but that's not it. I mean, if we want to talk to God, or even sit silently trying to be aware of God, yeah, that's wonderful. I mean, I think that's important. And that's why I put my flowers up there, because it's like, how can I show this? Oh, my backyard. It's one of the reasons I love to sit in my backyard by my garden. The size of the Torah scroll, it's usually about this tall. The length, Bob, you can maybe answer.
If you were to unroll one, it could go around this room about 1.5 times.
Oh my God.
It's very long. Now, keep in mind, it's all written carefully by hand with a quill pen, with a certain mixture of ink that is very long lasting, which is also why we use a pointer when we're reading to keep our place and not let our hand oils mess up the letters, so they last for 100 years, more than that, a long time. And the pages are sewn together. I mean, everything is done by hand, by the scribe. And it's truly a labor of love and holiness. Life after death. We all there is no real doctrine. Most Jews do believe in life after death. How to describe it, we don't really know. There is a belief, and the word for the Jewish hell is Gehinnom. And there is a belief that if your sins, if you're on the scale of right and wrong, if your good deeds are just one more to tip it in the direction of goodness, you're not going to Jewish hell. If it's just one more down, yeah, but it's not eternity. It's at the most a year, kind of like a learning curve. And I once had a dream, and this has been my belief for a long time, in which somebody that I knew had died and was looking in a mirror and reflecting on his life and what he had actually done and the things that he had done to hurt people that you could maybe brush past in your life. And it caused a great deal of pain. I also came across a teaching, which I said, this is from a rabbi of the 16th century, I believe. His name happens to be Rabbi Emeritus Bacharach. I don't know if he's related. I hope he is. His grandmother was a great Torah scholar when women weren't doing that. But his belief in hell, the afterlife, is if you go to hell, it's your own deeds that you confront. And it's like, wow, that's just like this Rabbi Bacharach. I'm going with this. But the rabbis believed in the Hebrew, the Beit Midrash Lamala, which would be the heavenly study hall. Just as there's a heavenly Jerusalem, there's a heavenly study hall. And the rabbis love that. And that's where we get to ask questions. And, okay, we can ask Elijah, we can ask Abraham, we can ask Moses, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And once when I eulogized a dear friend who had been my study partner, this was, in services, somebody just kind of wasn't prepared for that and cracked up at a kind of inappropriate time. But it was just because when I said, I know that you are in the Beit Midrash Lamala, the Heavenly Study Hall, and somebody just like did crack up. And it was just really like, honestly, Rabbi, that's just not my view of heaven. I said, maybe that's Jewish hell for you. We just don't know. But we really don't know. I do believe personally in being reunited with family, et cetera, that it's wonderful. But we don't really know, and so we don't really focus on that so much. It's kind of, we're really going to trust you, God, to take care of that part of the next phase of our existence. There are Jews that do believe in reincarnation, who have different views even of that. We're all over the place. And then if a person is truly evil, they've probably destroyed their soul, so there's probably nothing there. A lot of Jews believe in resurrection. That was our belief first. In fact, that was it was one of the big things with the Pharisees. This wasn't explicit in the Torah, and a group called the Sadducees very much were against this, and the Pharisees were very much, that was an important belief. They did believe in reincarnation, and that term still in our liturgy 3 times a day. Hebrew word is Mechayeh HaMeitim, who gives life to the dead. Many interpret that in different ways, but yes, it is an ancient Jewish belief. I mean, there's so many things that we share. Using the mikveh, pool of water, for purification. We have that in common. It's like, when we look at so much, it's like, yeah, I mean, and this is my favorite part and why I love doing interfaith work. Because when it comes right, we all believe in God. We do believe in a God of love. We do believe in a God that expects us to live righteous lives. And I just can't think of anything more glorious than that. That's. Are there any other questions? There had been a question that
You were talking about the religious holidays, holy days. Are there any in particular that you wish or you expect people of other faiths to recognize?
all of them. People are always invited to come and join us, always.
What do we expect them to observe?
Oh, to observe. Oh, no. No, we don't expect non-Jews to observe our holidays. I mean, there are interfaith families which will, involve all of them. But for Christians, you guys have plenty of your own holidays. We have plenty of our own holidays. So we don't celebrate each other's holidays. You're always welcome to join us, though. Yes.
Is your congregation a Reformed congregation or what? You know how there's like different sects? Because when I lived in Chicago, I lived in an Orthodox, Hasidic Orthodox Jewish neighborhood.
There is.
Obviously, you're not.
There are different movements, like the most liberal, there's us who are traditional, but not as literal as, say, the Orthodox. But within those, there are all kinds of groups. And here in Green Bay, down Lima, you've probably seen Chabad House, which is a Hasidic group, which is, within the Orthodox umbrella, it's kind of sad because we would do a lot of stuff with them, but they don't think women should be rabbis. Even though our rabbi is currently a male, my replacement, it's there. We have. It's sad that there should be those. What we say?
I just said Knesset is really conservative.
Yeah. It's sad that there are those barriers, and At one point, we've found through history that there were like women rabbis here and there, and when we didn't think there were any, and then they turn up. But it's pretty common now. From the Reform, they were the first, and the Conservative. A lot of my colleagues are women, a lot of them are men, and it's become normal. I don't get asked so many questions like, oh, I know of women rabbi in such and such a place. Do you know her? It's like, I only know the women rabbis.
Does every temple have the Torah? Every temple has the Torah, the scroll?
Does every synagogue have scrolls?
They hopefully.
Is it able
I mean-
to be used by everyone, the congregation, you know?
I mean, we have scrolls and they're kept in the ark, and people don't use them at home or take them home, which was a problem when we were on Zoom because our Rabbi Stagman, lives in North Milwaukee, and so he did Zoom services from his home, but we couldn't have a Torah service. Now we do, but yeah, I know a couple of people that have their own Torah scrolls. Very few do. And then when it comes to synagogues, hopefully every synagogue has a Torah.
These are much easier,
Yeah,
and a new scroll costs about $80,000.
Yeah, very
So
well.
that's not something else.
yeah, right. Yep.
And it's buying a scroll is a very major, wonderful undertaking, but we try to take good care of what we have. We treat it very carefully. But also, it's not even a case of, I mean, they're expensive, but the most important thing is this is the scroll, this is holy. And even though we have books and books have been around a long time, the holiest scrolls the holiest writings are in scrolls, and especially the Torah. And it's just, well, I've said this before, reading from it is one of the greatest joys I have, so.
The scrolls are, I should point out, they're very meticulously done. And we know from like the Dead Sea Scrolls and older scrolls that throughout that entire thing, that there's only like 5 letters that are even in question. But there's no translation difference. It's going to be exactly the same scroll in every synagogue. It's not variation of translation. And there's maybe 4 or 5 letters that are even in question.
Right.
Yeah, and it's amazing that every scroll, most scrolls are close to being identical. I mean, the columns have to be a certain length and a certain width, but you look at one Torah scroll, the next one will be like it, except for one that we have that has very wide margins, and we do take it out, use it for holidays, but it's also it's hard to do a lot of reading from because my normal landmarks aren't there. And we also have a very little scroll that's hard to read if your eyes are old. When Rabbi Steigman was new, he would sometimes get that one out, and I said, I can't read that. Not a long part. So, I'm guessing that, I hope that you don't have any more questions. If you do, send them to Mary Lynn. I see a lot of her, and we also we're both together. There's an interfaith group, G.I.F.T. I'm sure you've heard about it, and she and I are part of that, which is how we first met. But it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Rabbi, for sharing your faith with us and for getting us off to a great start with these community faith conversations. Appreciate your time and appreciate your gifts, not only tonight, but to the wider Green Bay community. Our next community faith conversation will be October the 12th, right here, same bat time, same bat channel. We will have with us Mary Kloss, who will speak to us about the Society of Friends. Again, that's October the 12th, right here at St. Anne's. Immediately following tonight's presentation, we have a small reception with light refreshments in the parish hall. So you go out of these doors, you turn back to the left, and then you turn back immediately to the right. Thanks to, Mary Jo.
The Society of Friends is the Quakers. Correct?
They're also known as the Quakers. Yes, that's right. Another name for the Society of Friends. So thanks to everyone who attended in person. Thanks to everyone who joined us on the live stream, and we'll look forward to seeing you all next time. Thanks very much.
Go buy a house. We go there, we go there.
So,